Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my fellow brothers and sisters in Islam. Welcome to another edition of our Spectacle of Death, where we are utilizing this blessed month of Ramadan to not just reflect on life and to reflect on deeds, reflect on Allah's mercy and forgiveness. We're also reflecting on death. And when we reflect on death, it makes it more meaningful as to why we are doing what we're doing. If we were to just worship and in our understanding, worship was limited to this world, it will be very hard to understand the greater picture of worship. In a similar fashion, if we are fasting and we're praying Quran and we're turning to Allah, but that understanding of it is limited to just this mortal life alone, it will be very hard. Rather, it's going to be very difficult to continue this prescription for the long haul. And that is why in this Ramadan, we are taking the opportunity to discuss death. Because once we understand death, then and only then can we appreciate the next life. And if we don't understand death and we don't understand that the transition from this world is going to happen, it's inevitable, then we will be blinding ourselves from the greater picture. And so, Alhamdulillah, we had in the last few days, with the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, had the opportunity to actually see things from a bigger light. We understood death, the way death occurs. We talked about barzakh, we talked about what happens in the grave. And subhanAllah, this book, The Spectacle of Death, is full of stories, stories after stories after stories. And our goal really our goal isn't really to get into a lot of stories, that rather is to get to the core message. Because if you and I can start contemplating now, we can then hopefully, inshallah, broaden our understanding and appreciation of tomorrow, of the day of judgment, and of course of paradise. So today we are embarking on a whole new subject matter, and that is hell and then heaven. This is going to be for a few days, inshallah, we'll be discussing hell. And of course, no one wants to know about hell. No one wants to even hear the name hell because it's not something I'm interested in. But, brothers and sisters, many of us, if not all of us, don't want to hear anything about coronavirus. We wish we could hear no more of it. And that would give us a sense of solace because every time we hear about coronavirus and cases and regulations and deaths, it just makes us cringe even more. But as much as you don't like hearing about it, at times it's important for you to know about it. Just say we stop listening about coronavirus, what that will lead to is us becoming ignorant of the reality on the ground. It will result in us making bad decisions and in turning to bad practices, such as touching our face and touching a shopping cart or touching a wall. And what that's going to do is exacerbate the problem and make it worse. So the whole purpose of awareness from the CDC and the World Health Organization and a lot is that you and I have an understanding. Yes, the subject matter is not a comfortable one. Yes, the subject matter isn't one that we would like to entertain on any given day. Okay, what do I do now? Oh, let me just start talking about hell, or let me start learning about hell. Many people don't do that. And so as much as it's not something we want to do, inshallah, it's something in this blessed month of Ramadan we are going to do. We're not going to exhort a lot of time and we're not going to, inshallah, scare people off, but our goal is so people can start understanding hell in its context. I want to begin with the description of hell, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about in the Holy Quran, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after creating hell, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment will communicate with hell. You know, hell will be brought up and heaven will be pulled down and the day of judgment will occur. It's going to be a very surreal experience. And imagine standing in this large plain where there are only humans upon humans upon humans, and of course the jinn kind, as far as the eye can see and beyond. And Allah is gathering everyone from the time of Adam alayhi salam all the way down to the final second when the day of judgment began. All these people are going to be standing. How many are there? Only Allah knows. But if our population right now is above 7 billion, and if we were to multiply that a few times over throughout the course of the ages and the era, imagine 20 billion people, imagine 30 billion people, whatever it may be, it's just a large number of people that are going to be gathering on the day of judgment, subhanAllah. And then everyone has to be called up one by one by one. It's going to take forever. And so, just as this lockdown It's taking forever for us to get back to sense of normalcy. When we rise from the grave tomorrow, there's no normal. When we rise from the grave tomorrow, there's no line. When we rise from the grave tomorrow, there's no direction. That is why it comes in the traditions that people will be standing waiting for the day of judgment, and every person will be in their own world. Someone will be in a state of fear, anxiety, stress, grief, sorrow, happiness, hopefulness. There's going to be so many different states. Some people will be biting their fingers and nails, as many do in stress, but they will be so stressed that beyond biting their nails, they'll be biting their whole hand. They'll be chewing away on their whole hand because that's how stressed out they'll be. In this world, we see people when they're in a stressful situation, they start sweating. On the day of judgment, the hadith tells us people will be drowning in their sweat. We learn that, subhanAllah, people in this world feel that there is a sense of there's a code of conduct when you walk outside and you cover yourself and you dress appropriately, inshallah. Well, on the day of judgment, everyone's going to be naked. And so everyone's going to be gathered. No one knows what to do, where to go, when to go, how to do. It's going to be so much confusion that some will locate prophets and they'll go to the prophet, O Adam alayhi salam, can you tell Allah to start this stuff? Because we're exhausted. It's like saying, can we tell the governor or the president or the world to start the world back up? People are saying that because they're frustrated. And it's only been what, a month and a half, 40 days or so? What's going to happen? A day tomorrow is going to be like 1,000 years. Another version comes 50,000 years a day. Subhanallah. What is it going to be at that time when a person will be standing for days? And so Adam salam say, not today. I made a mistake, and because of my mistake, we came down from heaven. I can't ask Allah today for anything. And so people will go frantically between prophets, pleading to the prophet to ask Allah, can we just start this course? I understand it's going to take a million years maybe, but at least we can start. And there's some hope that there's one by one people are being called to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember, Allah is one. Judgment is in front of the one Allah. Allah's not going to have like registers like in Walmart where people can go line up. No, one at a time. And subhanAllah, that one person has to account for themselves. And then after that, they have to account with humanity. It's a long haul process. It's not a simplified process. So subhanAllah, on that day, people will even say, let us just jump into hellfire and end our misery. We cannot bear to handle this anymore. Subhanallah, I read an article yesterday that was sent to me by one of my friends who's a physician. Really broke my heart. One of the ER doctors up in New York, she committed suicide. She just couldn't take it anymore. And subhanAllah, when you think about these things, how much trauma was she witnessing day in, day out as one of the head ER specialist doctors in New York? And I don't recall the name of the hospital, that she just couldn't take it anymore. Imagine standing in a place where everyone is in their own world of screaming and crying and sorrow and grief and sweating and chewing up their body, and you're hearing these screams and these cries of agony, and you can't do anything. You can't leave it. For example, if there's a lot of noise outside, I could close the window, or I could close the door, or I could shut the blinds. There are things you can do, but tomorrow, that day of judgment, you can't do any of those things, my dear brothers and sisters. You can't shut any door because there's no doors. You can't kill yourself. You know why? Because even death does not exist anymore. Death, inshallah, death on the day of judgment will also be killed. So there'll be no death. There's no more. There's no concept of death anymore. And so, in the midst of this chaos, let me give you and I some hope. It's in the midst of all this chaos that we will find solace in the word of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who stated, "Sabahatun yudhilluhumullahu tahta dhilli arshihi yawma la dhilla illa dhillu." There are seven categories of people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant shade under His throne on a day that there will be no shade but the shade of His throne. Right? Seven categories of people. And there are many of those categories. I call them you and I, and I'm not going to share it with you, to search up the hadith. Who are the seven categories of people that will be under the shade of Allah's throne on a day when everyone else will be in the open and there'll be no shade, there'll be no cover save the shade of Allah's throne. It's like when you're in Saudi Arabia, you're in the middle of a desert, you're in the heat in the midday, you can't find many options to give you shade. Even if you stand by a building when the sun is dead center in the middle, uh, you know, dead center high up and above, you cannot find any shade. And so you suffer to find even the sliver of shade and find the comfort within that shade. On the day of judgment, the sun will be so close. And at that day, people will be in such a desperate state. It's like if an airport during Thanksgiving is packed, it's jammed, it's full. You can't even walk. If you want to go eat at one of the restaurants or you want to go grab a burger or something of some sorts, the lines are crazy long. And you're juggling between do I grab something to eat? Do I use the bathroom or do I go line up my flight? In the midst of all this chaos, there's lounges. And people who are entering those lounges have more safety and peace. It is quieter, there is food there, there are bathroom facilities, and they let you know that it's time for you to check in and off you go to your gate. So if you understand that metaphor, my brothers and sisters, understand that metaphor in the context of what we're just talking. On that day of judgment, when everyone will be in chaos, there'll be a few selected people that will be allowed to go and sit under the shade of Allah's throne. On that day, when the entire humanity will be naked, they will be clothed. On that day, when everyone will be thirsty and hungry, they will be sitting, reclining, talking to each other, drinking the water, and eating the foods of goodness while they're waiting. And they will be clothed with the garments of paradise. Who are those seven categories of people? I don't think that chat is functional today because I don't see any response, which is fine. But inshallah, I ask of you to go find out today what are those seven categories of people. And upon understanding this description, my fellow brothers and sisters, I ask you to make the choice and selection yourself. Do you want to be amongst those who are going to be in the shade of Allah's throne, or do you want to be amongst the masses? If you want to be amongst those who will be in the shade of Allah's throne, then I call on you and I to work ever more so diligently and hard this Ramadan to make sure that we can fit all seven of those criteria so that we can be blessed under Allah's throne and His shade. Ameen Rabbil Alameen. So that being said, inshallah, going back to the point I began with, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment will speak to the hellfire. As Allah says in the Holy Quran, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, يوم نقول لجهنم هل امتلأت again هل امتلأت وتقول هل من مزيد. On that day, Yawma, on that day, Naqulu, we will say, Li Jahannama, to the hellfire, are you full? Allah will ask the hellfire on the day of judgment, are you full? Meaning, are you satisfied with those who are residing within you? Because imagine hellfire like a hungry stomach that never fills up. You can put so many cakes and Twinkies and bags of chips and Doritos, whatever you want to put in it. Keep on filling it up. It never fills up. It is never satisfied. It just wants more and more. And this is the example of hell. Allah did not create hell to show the humanity how He will punish them. Allah did not create hell to hate on those who are going into it. Allah created hell as a deterrent. The purpose of hellfire was so that you and I fear Allah enough that we don't go there. Unfortunately, there are from Allah's creation those who will never take heed or who will decide not to take heed, and thus, in result, they will end up in the hellfire. May Allah protect you and I. Everyone, we should say Ameen, inshallah. Ameen to that. It's really important. May Allah protect all of us because the last thing we want is to go into the hellfire. No one wants to go into the hellfire. So, subhanAllah, hellfire will then say to Allah, Hal min mazid. I want more. Are there more? I want more because it just wants to eat. It's that stomach. So if you understand the analogy of your body, if heaven was this top part and hell is that lower part, it's interesting to know how that stomach is always asking. You don't hear your brain asking you for something, but your stomach grumbles, your stomach rumbles, your stomach growls, it makes noise, it wants food, it wants more, it wants to be given its due attention. In the same way, hell will be asking Allah, the creator of it, the Allah who created hell. Allah will ask it. It should, in submission and humbleness, say, I'm good, I'm fine. No, it's going to say, I want more. And subhanallah, so that goes to show also that inshallah, with Allah's mercy, everyone's not going to hell. Many people will not be going to hell. Inshallah, hell will be small and hell will be empty. And inshallah, all of humanity we pray for succeed to go into the heaven, inshallah. Walaikum salam, Muhammad Ali. I do see, mashallah. So thank you so much for responding. Jazakallah khair. So we can actually share our messages. So if you have a knowledge of the seven categories of people who will enter paradise, sorry, if you know the seven categories or one of the seven categories of people who will be under Allah's throne, the shade of Allah's throne on a day when there'll be no shade, please feel free to type it and we will share with each other. But I would like you to do some legwork also so we all can appreciate what's being discussed. So now that I've given you a picture of the day of judgment and how it is not something you and I can comprehend totally because this is something beyond our grasp. What's going to happen on that day? It's going to be beyond our grasp. Aisha radiallahu anha, she asked the Prophet Muhammad about this day of judgment, and he told her this scenario somewhat similar to what I expanded upon. And he told Aisha radiallahu anha, Hufatan, Uradan, Ghurala, uh, Hufatan, Uratan, Ghurala, that on that day people will be naked foot, like no shoes. Uratan, they will be naked body. Ghurala, meaning that even for the men and for the children, the males who were circumcised, when the body is brought back, even that skin that was circumcised and discarded, even that will return. Meaning that Allah, when He will resurrect us, if you think it's crazy that you are alive right now and how could Allah resurrect you? Well, there's a part of you, if you're a man or a boy that has been discarded and you and I don't know where it is, Allah knows. He's going to even restore that to us. So, subhanAllah, that is how meticulous Allah will be on this day of judgment. There's no error on the day of judgment. There's going to be no faltering on the day of judgment. There's going to be no mistake of files. For example, you hear about these silly stories. I'll call them silly stories because I pray they're not true. Sometimes you hear that there was a wrong decision, sorry, the wrong process was done on the wrong item. For example, if you sent your computer or phone and they thought your phone or computer was of another order and they messed up with it, unfortunately, you hear about that even in hospitals that the doctor was supposed to amputate one limb and they amputated the other side. These type of we call human errors. They happen because humans are not perfect. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's perfection is your deeds are going to be in your book, not in someone else's book. And your book is going to be in front of you, not someone else's book. There's going to be no mistakes. There's going to be no flops. There's going to be no flipping a flip flop on day of judgment. It's going to be clear cut. So the sound is really low. Okay, let's see what we can do here. Let me put the volume up. The volume is high as it can go. I'll just bring this a bit closer, inshallah, and let me know if that makes if that sounds better. We do have the fan running. I apologize. So I hope that's better, inshallah. So on the day of judgment, Allah's not going to make any mistake. It's only going to be right. Everything's going to be right. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He opens our individual records, everything in it will be so right. Jazakallah khair. It will be so perfect that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can challenge us on it. We can't challenge Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There will be no way, there will be no way that anyone can challenge Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on that day because everything is written, everything has witnesses to it. If I do a good deed, that good deed is witness. If I commit a sin, that sin is witness. And you would say, well, I do in the dark alone something. No, guess what? Even the walls, the carpet, the doors, the lights, everything can be brought to testify against you. If not, your own body can testify against you, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran. أنتقنا الله الذي أنتق كل شيء, that Allah, who has given everything a voice to speak, has given us also a voice to speak. These hands will speak. May they speak in our favor and not against us. Let's all say Ameen. The eyes will speak, the body will speak, the legs will speak, the limbs will speak, everything will speak. We say today on this fifth day of Ramadan, O Allah, allow these limbs, allow this body to speak in our favor and not against us. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. So, Alhamdulillah, that's just a brief understanding and description. Inshallah, now we want to go into the description of hell. As I said yesterday, and as I said in the beginning today, my fellow brothers and sisters, this is not to turn people off. Let us learn and let us all feel comfortable, feeling uncomfortable for a little while. Again, let's become comfortable feeling uncomfortable for the next few days as we describe hell. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to take heed and lesson. And then from there, of course, learn about heaven and then restore hope and goodness within ourselves. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Just gonna move my foot here. Okay. In the name of the Lord, the beneficent and the merciful. He says hereafter has been described in plain language and the circumstances of hell which have been gleaned from the verses of the Holy Quran and the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The principal reason why this compilation has been made is that though the Muslims often mention hell in conversations, yet they know not how and by what means they can attain salvation from it, because they, indeed, are ignorant of the fearful torments and hardship which are in store for the denizens of hell. Yes, granted, many Muslims speak about hell, and na'udhu billah, may Allah forgive all of us. Sometimes we allude the word hell to people like, oh, you're gonna go hell. Or we say sometimes even to our family members that if they don't do something, they'll go to hell. If they don't respect their parents or if they don't pray, they're going to hell. We talk about hell, so the word hell is kind of in our vocabulary, but what is hell? What defines hell? What is the intricacies of hell? Many Muslims, unfortunately, are ignorant of that subject matter. I trust that those Muslims who will go through this book carefully and repose faith in the veracity of the Holy Quran and the Hadith of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ will reflect upon the circumstances of hell. They shall find it easier to abstain from indulging in sin, and what's more, their own lust will not prove a great hindrance in the performance of virtuous deeds. He's saying that I'm hoping that if we were to understand it in its context, it will be actually a helpful asset for us. It will help us refrain from sins and will push back on lusts and desires. May it be the will of Allah that this work, like other religious books, should help the Muslims to turn to religion and piety, and may this book find increasing favor amongst the faithful. I appeal to the readers that they should remember this humble person in their prayers. We say Ameen to his prayer, and we say, may Allah reward this brother for his work. Ameen Ya Rabbil Alameen. As I said, this book was written many decades ago, and despite the fact that it was written many decades ago, I have the fourth edition, which was 1992. And so the fourth edition was 1992. The first publish of it was many years before that. So let's understand that, mashallah, he tried, and I think we should pray for those who tried their best to present to us a compilation so we can understand. Now, regarding the depth of hell, Hell is hell is a beast of its own. It's got a size, it's got a breadth, it's got a width, it's got a depth, it's got you know pieces to it. Just like a human body, if you're to learn the biology and like okay, there's parts of the body, the muscles, the bones, the nervous system, the veins, and then we're talking about the different organs. When you dissect a human, there's so many components and pieces to it. Well, in the same way, when you talk about how there's many different angles, hell is not just a picture. Hell is a thing. So let's start with the depth of hell. It is narrated on the authority of Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiallahu ta'ala that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, describing the depth of hell, remarked, if a stone is thrown into hell, it will take 70 years to reach the bottom. Subhanallah. Actually, we should say astaghfirullah. Now, if you were to throw a stone how long would you wait for it to hit the bottom? For example, if someone went to the Hoover Dam and threw something over, within a minute it will touch the bottom, like a rock or something, right? Which you shouldn't do. I'm just giving an example. Imagine 70 years. Something is falling. A rock has substance to it. It has weight. It's not like a paper plane that's just floating around air. This is falling. This is falling with purpose. It is not being pushed up by the gusts of wind, and it's not making 360s like an airplane can, a paper airplane can. It's falling, and it's falling for 70 years. Now, the question you and I can ask: 70 years of this world or 70 years of the next world? If it was 70 years of the next world, wow, that is scary. That is so scary. If we were to times that by 1,000, if that was to be times by 1,000, that would be 70,000 years. And if we were to times that by 50,000, 70 by 50,000, that's 35 million or so. Please do the math for me. 35 million, 3.5 million. I think it's 35 million. It's crazy how deep that tells you how big Jahannam is. There's another narration. In another narration of Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala, they were once sitting, and this one really scared me from the beginning. Whenever I heard this hadith back in childhood, this one really left impression on me. It never left me. Like it's kind of made its seal on me. What is that? One day they were sitting with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when they heard something falling, like they heard like a thump, right? Like a thump. And so the apostle of Allah said, do you know what it is? They heard something fall. Like you're in the home right now and you hear something fall, you'll say, what happened? Is everyone okay? Did someone fall? What happened, right? Or you see something fall, a dish break or something, immediately you go towards that. Sahabas are sitting with the Prophet Muhammad and they hear something falling, like they hear something that fell. And the Prophet said, do you know what that was? They said, Allahu wa Rasuluhu a'lam. No, Ya Rasulullah, only Allah and you know. We don't know. Even if the Sahaba knew, they never ever spoke because they never wanted to be intellectual in front of the Prophet. They wanted to gain the divine knowledge and wisdom from the Prophet. So even when he asked them, what day is it? What year is it? Where are we? We don't know. Allah and His Rasul. Maybe they'll tell us something more, something, not something new, but something which is beyond and much broader. A just ruler. MashaAllah. Muhammad Ali has written one of the seven, a just ruler. Let me write down number two and you can type it for me. Number two is two people who meet solely for the sake of Allah. اجتمعا عليه وتفرقا عليه. They gather for the sake of Allah's pleasure and they depart for the sake of Allah's pleasure. Meaning two people who know each other, love each other, respect each other only for Allah. No business, no other intentions, no gains, nothing personal, just for Allah. They will be under the shade of Allah's throne. So, mashallah, we got two. Please keep it coming. But inshallah, if you don't have it, that's fine. We can talk about it tomorrow. Please, you can pay attention also. But that was great, Muhammad Ali. Thank you so much. So, the Prophet ﷺ said, do you know what that is? Sahaba says, only Allah and His Rasul know best. The Prophet ﷺ observed, it is the noise produced by a stone that was dropped by Allah into hell some 70 years before it just touched the ground. A stone was thrown and it was falling for 70 something years. And as you and I just heard that thump, it just hit the bottom. Now, you and I can say a lot of things on this. Like, come on, let's be real. How can they hear something from hell when we can't even see hell? And how could Allah do that? And how did the Prophet know that it was 7 years? Brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took Rasulullah in this Mi'raj. He got to see many things. A man who remembered Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Very good. So there was a person, Rasulullah saw many things during the Mi'raj. And Rasulullah in one dream specifically, angels came and took him and it was a spiritual journey. This wasn't the physical one, where he saw different punishments in hell, and he reported this, and he informed the Sahaba of these different punishments. And I think we spoke about it a little while back. So, Subhanallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened the veil temporarily between the Sahaba and the hellfire and gave this knowledge to the Prophet ﷺ so that he can inform us that this is real. Because what faith is all about is to believe in something that you don't know more firm than what you know and what you see. To believe in Allah, to believe in heaven and hell, to believe in the next life, with great certainty and determination more than what you believe things you have around you, that is called faith. And that is the faith that the Prophet ﷺ tried to instill within Sahaba. And maybe it was because of the desire of the Prophet ﷺ that he was given the permission to allow the Sahaba to hear just that. If they were to hear anything else, I'm sure this whole earth would have shaken out of fear. And so this one also tells us that the depth of hell is around 70 years of a stone fall, falling at whatever trajectory rate. I don't, the rate of fall can be what, how many miles per minute or hour, whatever the case may be. It's falling, it's been falling, it continues to fall. For 70 years, it will fall. This world, time according to the timeline of this world, or if according to the timeline of the next world, which is much, much more, regardless which one you take, I'm sure you and I can agree hell is deep. And if anyone goes into hell, there's no way they can climb out if that's the case. That's what we call abyss, doom, pit of hell, fall into abyss. It's something where you go, there's no chance of you coming back up. May Allah protect us. I mean, let's go to the next part, the walls of hell. So now hell is deep. How is it covered? The walls of hell. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has observed that hell has been encircled by four walls, and the breadth of each wall covers a period of 40 years. That is to say, each wall is so wide that it takes 40 years continuous walking to cover its breadth. Subhanallah. Astaghfirullah. So hell is deep and it has four walls, right? So like a cube has four walls. And if you understand a cube, it has four walls. Now we're not talking about this distance here inside. The wall itself, so if we were to take just one wall, it is so thick. The wall itself is so thick that it takes 40 years. 40 years to cover just the thickness of the wall, not the length or not the internal space that the wall's encompassing. The thickness of the wall itself is 40 years of travel. If a person was to walk for 40 years, they would 40 years of continuous walking would cover the breadth of the walls of hell. So when you go to Alcatraz or other places and you see that these are prisons for the worst people and they're practically impossible to break out of in XYZ claims, imagine a wall that's built so vast that 40 years of continuous walking would then cover its breadth. What to say of that? Astaghfirullah. May Allah protect us. I mean, let's go to the third part, the gates of hell. It's so it's so dark when you think about this stuff. It's scary. And that's why you'll do everything to make sure that we don't go wrong. I want to make sure I don't go wrong in life. I want to make sure I succeed. I want to make sure you succeed. I want to make sure all of us succeed. That's what it means being an ummah. We don't go to heaven alone. We take the masses with us to heaven. And so when we have that determination to take the whole world with us to heaven, inshallah, we will get to heaven. And inshallah, many more will get to heaven with us and because of us. Hell also has gates because you can't enter that confined area but through gates. The Holy Quran has observed about the gates of hell, and verily hell is the promised place for them all. لها سبعة أبواب لكل باب منهم جزء مقسوم. In Surah Hijr, Allah talks about this. لها سبعة أبواب. It has seven gates. and each gate has a separate portion for each one of them. Seven gates, each gate has its separate portion that covers hell, and each gate is a beast of its own. لِكُلِّ بَابٍ مِّنْهُمْ جُزْءٌ مَقْسُومٌ. Each gate has its own portion to it. Astaghfirullah. Surah Hijr. The Prophet Muhammad had himself observed hell has seven doors, and one of them has been reserved for those who draw a sword against my followers. Subhanallah. There is specific areas of hell, specific zones of hell, for specific people of hell. And one, the Prophet himself said, hell has seven gates, and one gate is exclusive for those who who raise a weapon against my ummah. Now, if you understand that, understand why the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-Qatilu wal-Maqtulu fin-nar. If two people of this ummah fight, the killer and the killed both go to hellfire. I.e., if two people stand up with the determination to kill the other for nothing which is justifiable, because of course in Islam there's a system of court, law, and justice, and so you would never take the law into your hand. But if two people stand up to fight each other to death, and one of them die or both of them die, they're both going to hell, because the Prophet ﷺ said, no one will raise a sword or a weapon on this ummah against each other. And if we do so, there's a special place in hell for those people. Astaghfirullah. We're going to cover two more things, inshallah, and we will pause for today. It just helps me keep my energy too, because of course exerting a lot of energy in talking, but I thank you so much for listening and for your attentiveness. Hell is not lit up. There's no LED lights, there's no Christmas lights, there's no disco lights. This is dark. It's a pit of darkness, which makes it even more scarier. Even if it was a small place, like a small haunted house, even if you go into a small haunted house, because it is dark and you are unaware of what truly lies within that small space, it seems like you are in the middle of a desert and you're scared. So hell is dark. Not only is it dark, but there's fire in it. The Prophet ﷺ stated, hell has been inflamed continuously for 1,000 years. You know how you prepare your barbecue or your barbecue pit or your fire pit? You don't just turn the fire on a barbecue and just start cooking steak or grilling chicken. No, you have to you have to prepare the heat. You have to make it a certain temperature, and then you drop the meat and you close it up, and then you cook it accordingly. You smoke whatever, smoking meat. I'm not saying smoking cigarettes, astaghfirullah. You smoke your meat, or you have a fire pit in the backyard and you do marshmallows. You don't just start a fire and stick a marshmallow in there, because the initial flame is really high and then it kind of calms down and then you kind of stabilize it. So in the same fashion, just move my legs here. In the same fashion, uh, hell, the fire of hell, the fire has been ignited for 1,000 years. Allah prepared that fire. The fire didn't just happen. So hell has been inflamed continuously for 1,000 years. Consequently, the fire became red. Have you ever watched different types of fires, like the wildfires in Australia? Just recently, we saw that in the end of last year, beginning of this year. The wildfire was so strong, you would see tornadoes within the fire, and you see different colors of fire. Fire has a yellow, orange, red, white, blue. There are different colors of fire. And so know that fire itself has different colors. That color reflects the intensity of its heat. If you ever see a blowtorch, nowadays a lot of people use like a blowtorch to caramelize their desserts or something in the kitchen. It has a bluish dark blue, then light blue, and then it's white. Why? Because the white part is the most intense heat. So if you understand that the colors reflect a level of heat, I want you to then take heed in this tradition. The hellfire had been inflamed continuously for 1,000 years. Consequently, it became red. Again, it was burned for another 1,000 years, and the red color became white. Still again, it had been kindled for 1,000 years, and the white flames turned into black. So that existing color of the fire of hell is black as the dark of night. Another authority states that the flames of hell do not illuminate, it always remains dark. An authentic narration from Bukhari and Muslim report that the Prophet Muhammad SAW observed this worldly fire is the 70th part of the fire of hell, meaning it's not even a percentage compared to the hellfire. And the Prophet Prophet's companion said, it is enough to reduce a sinner to ashes, of course, beyond ashes. The Apostle of Allah وسلم, said, if you add 69 degrees to the worldly fire, it equals a fire of hell. So if you get the most intense fire of this world, the most intense fire, and you multiply it 69 times more, that is the hellfire. Astaghfirullah. And the darkness is like, I've been to like back home, India, Pakistan, and they, for example, fry things on the streets. Alhamdulillah, I've never ate it. My stomach cannot, of course, absorb that type of food. But when you look at the oil, which was yellow in color or orange in color initially, like vegetable oil, whatever else, it's dark black, meaning the oil has been burnt. The oil which fries has been frying for so long that the oil itself has burned to black. So the oil has lost its capacity and potency to do what it's supposed to do because it's become so dark. And so that's what equals a fire of hell. In another narration, it reveals that the denizens of hell lie on the worldly fire. If the people of hell were to leave hell and lie down on the fire of this world, picture of Australia wildfires, they would enjoy sound sleep because the worldly fire is much cooler than the fire of hell. May Allah protect us from that. Ameen. I want to stop here because it only gets deeper. And I want us to take a breath because it's not about how much we're covering, it's how much we can think about. The next topic is about an estimate of the torments of hell and the levels of hell, which inshallah, and the diet of hell, which we will cover tomorrow. So alhamdulillah, my dear brothers and sisters, we have been blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to think about more than what we know, to think about more than what we understand, to actually use this blessed month of Ramadan, where hearts are becoming soft, to actually focus on the bigger picture, which is Jannah. This world, open or close, it's going to end, my dear brothers and sisters. Regardless if unemployment becomes worse or employment becomes better, this world is going to end. So don't let these waves of the world delude you and deceive you from the reality of what's coming. It's all going to end. So if every day you wake up, you should tell yourself, this world is going to end and I am going to die. And there's something tomorrow. What is my grave going to look like? Number one, where do I want to be on the day of judgment? Number two, and is hell something I want to run from? It's easy to say I'm going to paradise, but then hell is not too far back. But if I say I want to distance myself from hell and I want to go to paradise, then that means you're making double effort. May Allah allow myself and you and us all to make greater effort to refrain from hell, abstain from hell, protect ourselves from hell, and go into paradise. Ameen Ya Rabbil Alameen. Jazakumullah khairan to all of you for your time. I look forward to seeing you later on this evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.